Good morning. Welcome to my channel. I'm Jane from When Art Met Cloth, and I thought I would do another little demo for you. Thought I'd do a peacock, deeply inspired by my students who found this photo on a royalty-free website, and also another student who has been doing some collage. And I love collage, and I haven't done any for ages, so I thought it might be a good idea to give it a go again. So this is the image. I hope you can see that on my tablet. It's a really nice photograph, sort of very high contrast, lovely colours. So how do I start? Right, let's put that aside. So this is what I tend to do first. So really simple little sketches just to play around with the composition, because the original photo was a square and the block I happen to have is a rectangle. So I just played around to make sure I was happy that it looked comfortable within the space, and played around with a couple of colour ideas. This is an analogous colour scheme here, where the purples and the greens and whatever are really close to each other on the colour wheel. It looks really nice and rich, but the bird doesn't really pop on the purple, so I went for a slightly limier green. This one's a bit more yellow than I ended up with on the final piece. So just to show you that it's worth spending 10 minutes doing a thumbnail. You get to play around with the image, you get to make sure you're happy with the direction it's going to go in, and it takes such a little time. It really is worth doing that. So okay, so this is my block. It's not coming up the colour quite right. It's a very sort of yellow limey green. It's just a gessoed block. So I've painted the background of that because it's much easier to paint it as the first stage rather than try and carefully paint around something afterwards. Now you can use collage paper from anything, but I tend to paint my own, largely because I don't have a range of papers in the colours I would like, and then I know that the substrate is all the same and the paint will sit fine on top of it, because I usually paint on top of the paper. So all I've done is painted some cartridge paper, hopefully you can see that, in a range of colours I think I'm going to need for the bird. Obviously if I'm short of a colour I can always do a little bit of extra. So I've got lovely greens and blues and some greys. I might even do some purples actually, I'm undecided, so I might get round to that. As you can see, I've tried to keep it really quite rough, quite not smooth, with lots of gaps and texture and movement. The scruffier is the better really, and then I will whip round those little pieces and use that for my collage as the basis of this painting. So more on that later. Right, on to the next stage. As you can see, I've ripped up some of the paper and done a little bit of placement just to see if it's really what I'm looking for, and then it's just a question of using some I've watered it down slightly because this PVA glue has gone a little bit thick, so I am just going to stick the bits of paper on where I want them. Put plenty of PVA on because I can paint on top of it, and I'm going to varnish this anyway when it's done. So I'll just keep looking at my image and then place these little bits of ripped up paper just where I want them, just painting the backs, sort of sliding them into place. Once they're sort of damp you can slide them about a bit. Oh, I've got one in my glue. Let's fish that out. Probably got too much glue on it now. This is the advantage of having plenty of paper and newspaper down and an old shirt on, because it can be a bit of a messy activity. Right. Okay. So I'm just putting those on and sliding them around a little bit just till I get them positioned as I want them. The crest of this peacock is really quite bright green, but it's got a few bluer bits in, so glue sticking to my fingers. I'll add a few blue bits as well. I can always modify this slightly when I come to paint on top. I think that's probably okay. Okay, so just hold this up to the camera slightly so you can see. Can you see how the fact that that paper was painted in a quite rough, sketchy way gives you a sense of feathers and movement and texture? That's largely what I'm looking for. Okay, I shall do a little bit more and take you with me when I've made a little bit more progress. Okay, I'm going to do a little bit more of the collage. Hopefully you can see that I've made a start with the crest of the bird and the top of the really blue bit of his head, and we're going to start working on the neck now. This is what I do, I just literally rip up bits of my paper and just look by eye about what sort of shape I want, and then just try it on, see if I'm happy with it. Yes, I am. Bit of glue. And then put it on, and you can sort of, once it's on, you can sort of slide it into place. Really happy with that. Okay, I want another palish bit for his throat. I don't tend to cut them with scissors. I find that the torn, ripped, rough edges just look better somehow. It needs to curve the other way, so I'm going to have it that way. Okay. It's quite contemplative. Oh, I can never say that word. Quite enjoyable, just concentrating on the shapes and the colours. Of course, I'm a bit of a colour bird, so I'm always interested in playing with colour, and collage really allows you to do that. Just keep ripping little bits of paper, thinking about where it's light, where it's dark, where do you want each of the colour blocks to be, and then just keep building up the bits of the bird. Quite like that pale bit on the end of there. How could I use that? Too much contrast there, maybe here. It's looking for those sort of graduations between the colours, so that it has, once you've finished it, obviously it looks a bit of a mess at the moment, and it will do for a while, those sort of gradual changes of colour, which I will modify as well with a bit of paint on top. So, other bit stuck down. Quite like that bright piece. Use that down here. Yeah, so it's not really too thought through. I just sort of make decisions as I go, really. Just keep ripping those little bits of paper and building up the layers and the textures until I'm relatively happy with it as a base layer, because obviously I am going to paint slightly, not too much so I lose my collage, but we'll do a bit of painting on top. Okay. As you can see, I glue the backs, and then you can put a little bit on the front as well, just really help secure it and get it to sit down. Okay, right, I need a bit of brown for this eye. Okay, what shape do I want? I'm not the greatest at spatial awareness and working out shapes, so sometimes this can be a bit challenging for me. A little bit too long. Let's quite a messy process, hence wearing an old shirt. Me and acrylic are not the best of friends, so I find it best to wear some old clothes, and I've also got some newspaper down, which you can probably see. Okay, that's the basic eye. No, not happy. Oh, that's better. There. Oops. It is a messy process, and the glue gets stuck on your fingers and you have to sort of pull it off, but there we go. Okay, so it's building up quite nicely actually. Let's do some more of this greeny blue. Such a pretty colour, one of my favourite colours actually. Right, I should put that bit there, I think. So it's a bit different from painting. It is painting because you're painting with a paper, but you are effectively building up a base layer really. You could actually work this up to a finished piece without paint, but I like the combination of the two. It sort of adds a bit of interest and allows you to modify things slightly. They are beautiful birds. When you look at that beak and that eye, they just do look like dinosaurs. You can see where they came from really, can't you? Okay. I like these tiny little bits of white that pop out from where the paper is ripped, and I don't want to lose that too much when I paint on top. Too light there. Okay, let's move this bit down here. And I want a nice bright blue bit. Where have I got some bright blue? There we are. That's a good colour. This is the advantage of ripping and painting your own paper, that you end up with actually what you want rather than what you can happen to find in the magazine, which you'd have to have loads of magazines to be able to have enough collage paper in every single colour that you'd want. Well, I've got quite enough stuff stored at home. I don't think Tony wants me to have any more at home. It's quite bad enough as it is. Never going to be a minimalist as an artist, are you? Okay, right. Okay, we'll take a little break there and I'll come back to you when I've done a bit more. Just a little tip. For when you're ripping your paper, if you want there just to be a coloured edge, then rip the coloured paper towards you, and then you'll end up with, just waiting for that to focus, go on camera, a coloured edge. There we are. See that against the blue of the bird. If you want it to be a whiter edge, so I just rip the coloured paper towards me, and then I'll end up with that little edge of white. I personally quite like that, but that's really personal preference. So you can end up with a coloured edge or a white edge, whichever way you rip it. Okay, so I've started to add a little bit of colour with paint on top of the collage. What I really want to do is make sure that I don't lose the sense of the collage underneath. I've done some paint up here. I've added some dark paint to, come on camera, focus, come on, focus down here, there we are, to the base of these feathers at the top, and at the top here I wanted a slightly more subtle colour, so I just watered it down and painted it on a thin layer so you can still see the paint underneath, and that's called glazing. A useful technique just to modify without losing what's underneath really. And I've done a little bit of pen work here. I probably will do a little bit more on this a bit later as I bring the whole painting together. However, I don't tend to completely, covered in paint, don't tend to completely finish an area in one go and then move on to the next, because I find that when I do that, then once this area is finished and then I move on to here and paint that, then that will then look too pale. So I tend to work things up together, sort of in layers, so that it comes together. Right, that's my fingers cleaned of the paint I managed to pick up, which is why I do tend to wear an old shirt when I'm painting in acrylic. It's a messy process. Okay, right, so let's carry on. On the top of this bird's head, I don't know if you can see, there's little sort of dark points of colour amongst the bright colours, so I'm just adding those dark bits on, but still getting the sense of the light and the colour of the underneath bits of paper, so I don't want to overdo it. There we are. Here it needs to be a bit greener, so green for my palette. And I want to go back to darker. It's got that dark nostril. I'm going to paint that in. Might need a few coats just to get the depth and the detail that I'm looking for. So I'm mixing my darks from a brown, a purple and a dark blue. And I'm testing them to see if I like them. Yeah, that's not too bad. I'm just gradually starting to give him a sense of a bit more depth. You can see how that top area looks a little bit more natural and real, because we've now got some depth with the colours, and it sort of pulled together the collage. Not too much on the brush. Right, I want a slightly darker piece here, so I'm going to glaze with some of my darker, so water it down a little bit. And then do that little dark bit here. Again, I don't want to do too much because I don't want to lose my collage from underneath, but it does need a bit of definition. Okay. Just picking up some of the colours from my palette. Greener there. So this is the process, just keep looking at a picture, looking at where the colours are, and then just trying to modify your painting. Here that line is just a little bit too definite, so I'm going to water down a little bit of the green. And then just soften that slightly. There. Okay, so I'll do a bit more and then come back to you when I've made a little bit more progress. Okay, welcome back. I'm a complete beginner at videos, as you might have realised, and I've managed to record a whole bit of finishing this bird when it wasn't recording. Oh well. So, hopefully I can show you the finished piece anyway. I've carried on painting, adding darker paint and a few lighter bits in this top of his head, just to add some definition, but hopefully, I don't know if you can see that well on the camera close up, you still get, yes you can, it's catching it, you still get the sense of the texture of the paper. So the skill is really not to paint too much, so you still get a sense of that paper coming through, and in places you can still see the white edges. I haven't completely covered all those up. Some of them I've painted thin layers of paint just to modify them slightly. So that's really what the secret of success is to keep that collage underneath but add just enough definition with the top layers of paint so you end up with an image that is sort of pulled together. I hope that was helpful, and hopefully my videoing will get better with practice. Thanks for watching.